Nobody in Gilead ever suspected the real threat was standing right in front of them. Not June Osborne, not Mayday, not the rebels hiding across the border. The woman who truly understood how to destroy Gilead was Aunt Lydia, and her most dangerous weapon was never violence. It was Hannah, because while the commanders believed they were turning June's daughter into the perfect, obedient woman, Aunt Lydia was quietly transforming her into something far more dangerous, an insider who could expose the entire regime from within. And the terrifying part is, Gilead practically handed Lydia the opportunity themselves. By the time the Testament begins, Gilead already looks powerful on the surface. The commanders still control society through fear, religion, and brutal punishment. Women remain trapped inside rigid roles designed to erase individuality completely. But underneath that image of order, the system is beginning to rot. Corruption is spreading everywhere. The men enforcing morality are secretly violating their own laws. The commanders are becoming paranoid, greedy, and reckless, and Aunt Lydia sees all of it. That is what makes Lydia so terrifying in the story. Unlike the other leaders in Gilead, she understands something critical. Regimes like this do not collapse from outside attacks first. They collapse when the people inside stop believing in them, and Hannah becomes proof of that collapse. Before getting into Lydia's manipulation, it's important to understand who Agnes Jemima really is, because in Gilead, Hannah no longer exists. Her identity has been erased and replaced. She grows up as Agnes Jemima, the adopted daughter of Commander Kyle and Tabitha. Unlike June, Agnes barely remembers life before Gilead. She is raised completely inside the system. She learns the rules, the prayers, the rituals, and the expectations forced onto women from childhood. She genuinely believes this world is normal because she has never known anything else. That is why her storyline is so disturbing. Agnes is not rebelling against Gilead because she remembers freedom. She is rebelling against the only reality she has ever been taught to trust. And Aunt Lydia notices very early that Agnes is different. Not rebellious, not loud, not reckless, intelligent, observant, curious. Lydia realizes Agnes has the exact qualities Gilead fears most in women. The problem is that Agnes herself does not understand that yet. Like most girls in Gilead, she believes obedience will keep her safe. But the older she gets, the more she begins noticing cracks in the illusion around her. Those cracks become impossible to ignore once marriage enters the picture. One of the darkest realities in Gilead is that young girls are essentially prepared for ownership. Marriage is not about love or partnership. It is a transaction controlled by powerful men. Girls are assigned husbands based on status and usefulness. Commander Judd is one of the clearest examples of Gilead hypocrisy. Publicly, he is respected, powerful, and untouchable. Privately, there are rumors surrounding him that terrify everyone. His wives keep dying under suspicious circumstances. Young girls disappear into his household and never truly escape. But because Judd is a commander, nobody openly questions him. That is when Agnes finally understands the truth about Gilead. Women are not protected in the society. They are consumed by it. And Aunt Lydia knows exactly what is waiting for her. This is where Lydia's role becomes fascinating because her decision to intervene is not purely compassionate. She is not suddenly becoming a hero. Lydia still helped build this system. She still punished women. She still enforced cruelty for years. The story never allows the audience to forget that. But Lydia also understands that Gilead is becoming unstable and dangerous even for its own loyal followers. So when Agnes faces marriage to Judd, Lydia offers her another path: become an aunt. At first, this seems like a rescue, and in some ways it is. Entering aunt training removes Agnes from the marriage system entirely. It protects her from becoming another commander's teenage wife. But Lydia's decision goes much deeper than protection. What she truly sees in Agnes is potential. Because the ants occupy a unique position inside Gilead. They are among the only women allowed to read and write. They handle records, punishments, confidential reports, and internal communications. They exist closer to power than almost any other women in the regime. Lydia understands this better than anyone because she has spent years quietly collecting secrets, and those secrets are explosive. Over time, Lydia has witnessed endless corruption among the commanders, men breaking the same laws they force everyone else to obey, illegal relationships, financial crimes, political betrayals, violence hidden behind religious language. The entire system is built on hypocrisy, but nobody can expose it because fear controls everyone. Lydia decides to change that, and Agnes becomes the perfect person to help her do it. What makes Agnes valuable is that she is clean. She grew up privileged within Gilead. She was never a handmaid, never publicly rebellious, never associated with resistance movements. To the eyes and the commanders, Agnes looks like the ideal product of the regime, obedient, educated within limits, deeply religious and loyal, which makes her invisible. That is the genius of Lydia's strategy. The safest spy is not someone hiding from the system, it's someone the system completely trusts. As Agnes begins ant training, her entire worldview slowly starts changing. And the most powerful part of this transformation is that it happens through education. In Gilead, literacy itself is revolutionary. Women are intentionally denied knowledge because knowledge creates independence. The regime survives by keeping women intellectually powerless. But now, Agnes can read, and once she starts reading, everything changes. The illusion begins collapsing piece by piece, and this is where The Handmaid's Tale becomes much smarter than a simple rebellion story. Agnes does not suddenly wake up one morning and decide she hates Gilead. Her disillusionment is gradual and psychological. Every secret she uncovers forces her to question another belief she was raised to accept. That slow destruction of faith is far more powerful than instant rebellion, because Agnes genuinely wanted to believe Gilead was righteous. She wanted to believe obedience meant safety. She wanted to believe the commanders were honorable men chosen by God. She wanted to believe women suffered for a higher purpose. Instead, she discovers the people running the regime are terrified, corrupt, and morally hollow, and Aunt Lydia carefully guides her through that realization. What makes Lydia so dangerous is that she understands manipulation better than anyone in Gilead. She knows revolutions fail when driven purely by emotion, so instead of turning Agnes into a reckless rebel, Lydia shapes her into something more controlled and effective. An observer, a witness, a future weapon against the regime itself. But Lydia's motivations are far from pure. This is important because many viewers misunderstand her character. The Testament does not erase Lydia's crimes or magically transform her into a saint. She remains deeply morally compromised. The difference is that her cruelty finally gains direction. Lydia hates the commanders, not because she suddenly becomes morally perfect, but because she realizes the men controlling Gilead never truly respected women like her. They used the aunts as tools, while secretly viewing them as disposable. Lydia understands that even loyal servants eventually become victims in systems built entirely on power and fear. So she adapts. If she cannot openly overthrow Gilead, she will poison it from within. And the perfect way to do that is through its daughters. The story becomes even more powerful once Daisy enters the picture. Daisy, who is actually baby Nicole, grows up in Canada far away from Gilead's indoctrination. Unlike Agnes, Daisy understands freedom, individuality, and independent thinking. She views Gilead as horrifying from the start. The contrast between the daughters is brilliant. One daughter was raised by democracy, the other was raised by dictatorship. And when Lydia brings them together, the story transforms from political rebellion into something deeply personal. At first, Agnes and Daisy do not instantly become emotionally connected sisters. That would feel unrealistic. They are awkward around each other, suspicious, unfamiliar. They were raised in completely different worlds. Daisy sees Agnes as sheltered and indoctrinated. Agnes sees Daisy as reckless and disrespectful, but that tension is exactly what makes their relationship compelling, because despite their differences, both girls eventually realize they are victims of the same system. Gilead stole their family, and Lydia plans to use that truth against the regime. By this point, Lydia has spent years compiling evidence against powerful commanders, hidden files, illegal activities, blackmail material, proof that the leaders of Gilead are violating their own secret laws constantly. The challenge is getting that information beyond Gilead's borders. That becomes the real mission, not assassinations, not explosions, exposure. Because Lydia understands something the commanders do not. Authoritarian systems survive through illusion. Gilead's power depends on appearing morally superior and divinely chosen. If enough evidence exposes the corruption underneath the surface, the regime's legitimacy begins collapsing both internationally and internally. And this is why Agnes matters more than almost anyone else. She is living evidence that Gilead failed. The regime raised her carefully from childhood to become the perfect obedient woman. Yet, the moment she gains knowledge and access to truth, she begins rejecting the ideology entirely. Agnes proves that even Gilead's own daughters cannot fully believe in the system once they see what lies underneath it. That irony is devastating, and Lydia understands how symbolic this really is. June Osborne spent years trying to physically rescue Hannah from Gilead, but Lydia ends up rescuing her psychologically by giving her access to truth. Not because Lydia is kind, but because she realizes educated women are the greatest threat to authoritarian control. That is the true horror for the commanders. The thing they feared most was never violence, it was women thinking for themselves. By the final stages of Lydia's plan, Agnes is no longer simply surviving Gilead. She understands it. She sees the machinery underneath the religious language. She recognizes the hypocrisy hidden beneath the rituals. And once that transformation happens, there is no going back. The girl who once believed obedience guaranteed safety now realizes the system was designed to consume women from the very beginning. And Lydia intentionally led her to that realization. That is what makes her relationship so psychologically complicated. Lydia manipulates Agnes, protects her, educates her, and uses her simultaneously. Their connection is built on both genuine care and calculated strategy. Lydia sees Agnes almost like a successor, someone capable of inheriting dangerous knowledge and carrying out the mission Lydia can no longer complete alone. Because deep down, Lydia knows Gilead's collapse is inevitable. The commanders are becoming weaker, more paranoid, and more corrupt every year. Fear is replacing ideology. The illusion is cracking. And once Agnes and Daisy carry Lydia's evidence beyond the border, the damage is impossible to contain. The most poetic part of the entire story is that Gilead ultimately begins collapsing because of the very girls it tried to control, its own daughters. That is the ultimate humiliation for the regime. The system obsessed with controlling women accidentally creates the women who will eventually expose and destroy it. And Aunt Lydia orchestrates all of it from inside the machine itself, which is why her character remains one of the most fascinating and disturbing figures in modern television. She is neither fully villain nor fully hero. She is a survivor, weaponizing the only power left available to her. A woman who spent years enforcing brutality before finally deciding to turn the system against itself. But the story never lets her escape responsibility. Lydia cannot undo the suffering she caused. She cannot erase the women destroyed under her watch. And that moral stain is exactly what makes her storyline compelling instead of simplistic. Her revenge against Gilead does not redeem her completely. It simply reveals that even monsters created by authoritarian systems can eventually turn against their creators. In the end, Aunt Lydia's greatest act is not punishment, it's education. Because the moment Agnes learns how Gilead truly works, the regime's future is already doomed.